in studio is Mr. Levindo, the political analyst, and Tsepo Khadima. Good evening to you, gentlemen. The lines are open at home. Let's just look at what's transpired since Helen Zilla's tweets. Of course, a lot of it fall out within the DA party structures, mainly with the black DA supporters saying that it is in bad taste and they do not support it. What do you think is essentially happening within the DA structures, Khadima?
Look, I don't think we should read it that perhaps maybe it's Helen Zilla here acting out of character. And apart from that, it's not a mistake. I think it's something that is well calculated to reassure the traditional voter base of the Democratic Alliance, which I hasten to add that the only thing democratic about it is the name, to reassure that voter base that they have nothing to worry about. You have to take this in context that we are talking about important issues in the country. Land restitution, very important. We never addressed the 1913 land question, and that is as a direct result of colonialism. And we can talk a lot about that. We talk about transformation, socio-economic transformation in the country. And against the backdrop of this, there's certainly going to be pressure on the traditional voter base of the Democratic Alliance, who we hasten to add are the beneficiaries of not just colonialism but apartheid as well. Therefore, the fear within the Democratic Alliance would be that unless they are reassured, they might change their allegiance, which the Democratic Alliance cannot afford that. From the beginning, or from inception, I think when Mmusi was elected, we have to bear in mind that at that very conference where he was elected, the late Alistair Sparks paid glorious tribute to people like Verwoerd, that they were smart politicians. And the young Mmusi then, even after taking the helm, he really couldn't say much more than just to apologetically distance the party from that and say, look, we are looking forward. But unless you address the past, it's impossible for the party to move forward. But Helen Zilla is amazing. How could she, being the leader of the standing that she is, not fully appreciate that whenever she speaks, and more so as a former leader, that her word will carry voice, unless it is a well-calculated, orchestrated move to reassure that traditional voter base, which I hasten to add also that it is very verkrampt.
Yeah, but verkrampt or not, I mean, they had done very well in attracting the black vote because that's where the numbers lie. And for any party who has aspirations to unseat the ANC in 2019, they're going to have to bring in that cohort of black voters. So the progress, it seems now that they essentially taken 2 steps back, just based on the misdemeanor of Helen Zilla.
Well, Cindy, I think one aspect that we need to look at is that when the DA was being run by Helen Zille, there was tremendous growth in terms of the black support. And that is actually clearly confirmed by the election results. But I think one must also indicate that the Democratic Alliance has not, one cannot sit down and say the growth of the party has actually gone up.
Yeah, but I'm saying specifically on the black support, because under the independent Democrats with Patricia de Lille, we know that they got the critical swing vote, the colored vote. But under Mmusi Maimane, and maybe to a large extent Lindiwe Mazibuko and her cohort, or rather group of leaders, had given a different complexion to the DA as we know it. So the impact of Helen Zilla's actions now are now beginning to question exactly what the ideologies are of the DA, especially when it includes the greater involvement of black people in the mainstream.
Indeed. The black members of the Democratic Alliance are not impressed by the behavior of Helen Zille. And obviously, this takes a number of steps back for the Democratic Alliance, especially to go and still attract the black voters. But also at the same time, as you said that a lot has happened, now there seems to be an agenda to divert South Africans from the tweet to something else. Because when you see the article by Helen Zille today, it seemed to be challenging the leadership of the Democratic Alliance to say they're actually now joining the agenda of the ANC. That would actually mean to me that the Helen Zille is actually saying that the Democratic Alliance is actually losing focus because they're now following the agenda of the African National Congress. And that would mean that she has no confidence in the current leadership. But another very important aspect about the Democratic Alliance and Mmusi Maimane is that one of the biggest challenges he has is to ensure that the support of the traditional members of the DA are still moving with the party, and at the same time attract the black voters to the Democratic Alliance. And there should be a balance between the two, and both has to be successful.
That would be a very audacious plan, as you mentioned, as the Trojan horse, Helen Zille, and the fact that the core voter base of the DA would be very supportive of her. That's why even a sense of she's very arrogant in the sense that she supports the DA structures and ideology, albeit that it is colonial, you know, in inverted commas. So how then is Mmusi expected to rein Ms. Zille in, and she sits on all these structures? Can he really make a meaningful attempt at trying to rein her in?
We must bear this in mind. Mmusi Maimane is really a leader in name. And I think the day that he was elected, I did ask that question in relation to the constitution of the Democratic Alliance in terms of what powers it vested in the leader. And when you read it, you really realize that the leader is nothing more than a figurehead. And there is very little that really Mmusi can do. Now, the Democratic Alliance and the leadership, the real leadership of Democratic Alliance, by the way, they know the numbers more than you and I do. What they have mastered is to be able to lie with statistics. And what do I mean by that? If you look at what they say is growth, I'm saying the growth in black voters came in despite the election of Mmusi Maimane. And when you look at the last local government elections, when you start to really look where it mattered the most, it was really, they became beneficiaries of voter apathy than their actually purported growth being what it is, because they had to go into governance with coalition. If indeed growth was there, even within that apathy, voter apathy, they would not have needed a coalition. So therefore, it means for the Democratic Alliance and the real leadership, they are now realizing that, hold on a second, if we do not retain the traditional voter base, come 2019, in fact, they are going to drop. Because you have to remember this, neoliberal political ideology, as well as the need for South Africa to transform materially and radically, as some people are saying, the two do not add. It's like steel and mud. They just cannot combine. So that is a problem that they are facing, and I think they are making the hard decision. What do? Do you go and you choose to go the route that Mmusi would like to portray, or do you go and reassure your... And Helen Zille, by the way, she's more in touch. She's more able to speak to those traditional Verkramte voters, which Mmusi Maimane is not able to do despite him having the position of leader. And therefore it means that for as long as he's in position, he will never be able to assert any authority. First and foremost, the power lies elsewhere. It lies with Helen Zille. And we should not be surprised that in this case, unfortunately, he will not be able to do anything. And what was even worse was for him to supposedly distance himself and the party from colonialism with a picture of Jan van Riebeeck right behind him. That told us the whole truth.
It speaks 1,000 words indeed. But now with the coalition of the EFF, we've seen their erstwhile Treasury General saying that the EFF had sold out to the DA. All these dynamics come into play in the sense of how will the party recover from this? And do they share in the common goal of an inclusive, non-racial, non-sexist, everybody shares in the prosperity of the wealth of this country? Levy, just based on what Madame Zille had to say.
I think what brings the DA steps back is the fact that on numerous occasions we'll have members of the leadership of the DA being involved in racial activities. Last year we had the Sparrow issue.
Yes.
And the DA took a decision through the processes of the party, and she actually got a very light punishment. And what now the DA has to do is that they need to act by the book and actually follow all the necessary processes. But the biggest question which one has to ask is to say, if what Helen Zille has done now is similar to what Sparrow did, what then will be the punishment? And if we say the punishment that was given to Sparrow was lighter, then obviously they must do the same. And that will be sending a message to say the DA doesn't take their racists very, very seriously, and they don't want to be seen to be punishing those that are having a racial tendency.
Yeah, so if they were to take an action for hypothetically speaking, of instituting criminal charges for inciting racism and contravening the Constitution in the sense of evoking those feelings around apartheid or even the denialism of apartheid, is that an avenue that the EFF or any other political party can take?
That's maybe in the realm of politics that they would do that, and hopefully maybe it will give them some currency. The difficulty with EFF is that they are coming from really a position of weakness. They are in coalition where it matters most in terms of the commercial hubs, the most important metros. EFF is in partnership with the Democratic Alliance. So for them to even assert that they can open up some case against Helen Zille, that's nothing but hollow talk. Because where it matters the most, they have not acted. If indeed they frown upon this, they actually don't even need to go and be going to open up any case. They need to dissolve. That's where it matters the most, because that's the only time that they can test surely to see, does the Democratic Alliance really walk the talk? And I'm asserting that the Democratic Alliance does not walk the talk, and that is based on many incidences which we are seeing, where various incidents of racism in this country, and even on the issue of land restitution, the issue of radical socio-economic transformation, they have been very quiet. Now you have to ask and say, well, can we really take the EFF serious when they say that they are frowning upon what Helen Zille said? Helen Zille simply just stated the truth, and my analysis, and having looked at really the various instances since she became leader, even after she has been leader, is that she is unrepentant. And one can even go closer to saying that racial undertones are very high in terms of her rhetoric and in terms of her thinking, and that is actually just who she is. But not only herself, but the party, because after all, she's still the leader, regardless of what we may like or not like. And Patricia de Lille has just stepped back, and you have to ask, well, how did that happen? You can, again, put it at Madam Helen Zille's door.
Okay, very briefly, if there's inaction on the party or a slap on the wrist, as it were, Levy, what impact would that have on the DA?
Well, hence I said the DA is in a quite difficult situation. Firstly, they cannot have the rules that only applies to Sparrow and the rules that applies to Zille. They have set a precedent that racists in the DA would only get a legal slap, and then they'll go on with their lives. And one would expect them to do the same. I think calling for Helen Zille to resign is a bit unfair and too harsh, because you can still make racial connotations within the DA, and then you found some few little rands of money, and then you continue with your business. And I would expect the DA to do the same with Helen Zille, because otherwise people are going to start saying that you have the rules for certain individuals and rules for other individuals.
Okay, we're going to have